Welcome back to the Forensics Detailing channel. So today we're reviewing a new detailing product, an all-in-one wheel cleaner brush called the Wolly Wormit. And it's got a few sort of kind of clever design features on it, this brush, that we're going to talk about. But ultimately, is it any good? So we're going to put it through its paces and try and answer that question in this video. Welcome back to the channel, guys. So the Wolly Wormit, have a good look at it all the way through this video. Constantly look at it and think about the shape of your alloy wheels if you're in the market for a brush, because that's the first thing. So we're going to be showing you using it. We're going to talk about what it is. So it's an all-in-one brush where they've tried to design a solution where you can just take one product and clean your alloy wheels, rather than have one for the barrels, another brush to do the surface, or wash mitt to get behind the kind of spokes of the alloys, and maybe a separate hog's brush to do your wheel nut, you know, the lug nut holes with. It's got a feature on there to do that. One other feature with it, guys, is that below the chenille cover is quite a clever design that is a plastic kind of flexible shaft with little bits, I think, of steel running through it, little kind of individual strips in there, so that it allows you to kind of bend the brush and hold its shape, so that you can also use this brush to get behind the spokes, you know, the little areas behind the spokes that you can't hit when you go in straight as well, but also all the way up the spokes to clean behind them. So that's an interesting design feature. One important thing, it's quite stiff, so it's not really bendy, which is probably a good thing for when you're actually trying to work this and scrub. It takes a little bit of bending to get it to go. So that is all the basic features. Now what I'm going to do is pan the camera down and actually demo this in kind of use. And then after that, I'm going to go through all the pros and cons and some of the other alternative brushes on the market and give you final conclusions on the brush. First up, this thing can get through the gap between my brake disc, so hopefully you can see all this, and the little kind of shield behind the brake disc. There's a bit of rub on the top of that, but that happens with all of them really. You don't want that rub to be too excessive. So basically I can get in there and I can clean out all of that area. Can I get it through that gap there? Yes, I can. Not completely, so it's getting stalled up. You know, I'm just showing you it kind of used, but I can get through there and I can clean that up okay. So next, guys, you can see with the brake caliper, so I can kind of get it in there. Hopefully you can see with the GoPro footage. I can't see what I'm recording, but it's gone through the brake caliper quite close to the edge, but it is getting kind of stuck. That gap between that brake caliper and the outside of the barrel is very, very small. It is kind of tapered, so you've got a thinner bit here and it starts getting thicker. But I can kind of get in there and get through to the edge of the barrel, although it's a bit, you can see it's getting a little bit stuck. But that's pretty good. That's the important bit, because with some of the other brushes that I've got, they won't get in there. Some of them will. So I think that's an important test to pass. So I could clean out this section of the alloy wheel without having to kind of get in the car and reverse it back a little bit, so the section that's behind there moves around. So that's a definite pass for me. Okay guys, so test 2 is how well does this thing clean behind the spokes of the alloy. So we're going to bend this. I'm wondering what happens if you bend it right over, if you can actually snap this or damage it. I don't know, I don't want to find out the hard way, but I'll only ever really need to bend it kind of 90 degrees. So I've done that, and it can hook behind these, and I can clean out behind the alloy wheel. Also, when I bend the brush like this, guys, hopefully you can see, it does allow me to get, as well as behind the spokes, it does allow me to get right down here between that alloy and clean out this little kind of channel, which is also kind of quite nice. So yeah, I would say that is a pass. Right, I'm going to clean the face of the alloy now. So it's kind of okay. it's a bit like using a stiff log to kind of clean. So I suppose it's this bit as well, which is the kind of like the main face of the alloy. So you can kind of put this down. I suppose you could also bend it a little bit. Then you've just got like a little smaller contact area. Yeah, it kind of works, guys. You can see what I'm doing. I can get into all the little bits. Okay guys, so I'd say with the lug nut cleaner, that's a pass. It fits in there, it goes over the lug nuts, and I can give it a good twist and a good scrub out. I've never used a sponge wunge before, but I can see it. I can see the dirt on it, so it's kind of pulling it out. So I don't see why that wouldn't be a pass. It's not particularly difficult to use. You know, you just put it in there, you can feel it's quite a bit of a tight fit, so you get a bit of scrub, but you are also over that nut. So there's a hole in there so that the nut slips inside there and you clean over the top of it. So that seems to work as well. Okay guys, let's go through the pros and cons now of all of this. So I've written loads of cons, and a lot of these cons apply to other formats of brushes, but I've written them down, so I just want to go through them. Now the first thing is, there is no handle on this brush, so you have to kind of grip it. You don't grip it on this lug nut thing because it's got thin arms in there and it shrinks in. You grip it on the actual kind of bit that you're cleaning the alloy with, so you could get your hands dirty. You know, this will pick up dirt, it's going to be cold, it's just, you know, some people might want a nice stout handle that you can grab hold of rather than actually grabbing hold of the shaft. Okay, the next negative is the price is 24 quid, and what I'll do is I'll go through some other options on the market so you can get an idea of how relevant that particular price is. Another negative is that I'd rather this Wolly Wormit label was not on there because it doesn't serve any purpose, and I'm using, when I detach this, I'm using this to clean the face of the alloy and stuff like that, and that label, although I'm not too worried about scratching, it's an alloy wheel, I just wish it wasn't there, so I put it down on a bit of paper. Next up guys, the material that they're using here, the chenille microfiber. There's always, with any brush or wheel cleaning thing, there's aggressive and there's safe and non-aggressive, and there's advantages and disadvantages to wherever it sits. The disadvantages with a soft kind of safe material like this, that if you were looking at this as a guy in the trade and you've got a car that rolls up, you've got to clean the alloys and it's done 100,000 miles and 2 or 3 years without the alloys ever being cleaned, you're going to need a more aggressive brush to really scrub at that dirt, unfortunately, and a soft chenille wouldn't be the most suitable material. However, on an alloy wheel which has been well maintained, then the benefits come in, that you could say, well, why are you using a sort of nylon brush to maintain that when you can use something that's soft and less aggressive? So it swings and roundabouts, but it's important as well when you look at this to understand that it's a non-aggressive format. Next thing I wrote as a negative, guys, that if you want a all-in-one thing that can do everything, the design is quite clever, and making use of the other end of the brush is something that I thought about a while ago when I was thinking about these and I've reviewed brushes. But putting a dedicated lug nut attachment on there is not a bad thing, but I was thinking, instead of putting a dedicated lug nut attachment on there, you could actually put a brush, like a hog's hair brush, that you could then use as a handle, and the hog's hair brush could also be detachable, and it might give you something better that's more suitable for brushing out the outside of the brush and also the lug nuts than just a dedicated lug nut only tool. And it wouldn't be beyond the realms of possibility for them to develop an attachment that could go on there as a handle and also a brush, and that might actually be a better option, although everything is debatable. But I wrote it on my list so that you could potentially have even more of a better product by offering a handle which is also a detachable brush. Okay guys, finally the pros. This brush does a pretty decent job. It does a good job. Most important thing I think for me is for it to pass the test of cleaning out the barrels, and it's done that. The lug nut cleaner is good and the bend function is quite good. I cannot measure how this brush holds up to being bent and straightened, and whether or not something breaks down long term from being bent and straightened, because I think it's strips of steel. So I will put a comment in the video 6 months later if this thing breaks on me, because I'm going to be using it, because I can use it primarily. So quite simply, that pro is that the brush seems to deliver well on all of its kind of wheel cleaning functions that it's trying to do. The one that it doesn't do quite as well is the faces, because of the design of it being like a log rather than a softer mitt, like I've said about. It is a positive, guys, that for some people that it's also non-aggressive. So if you're maintaining the finish of a well-maintained alloys, this is perhaps the sort of brush you used. And quite simply, I think I could see myself using this because it works. So those are the pros, those are the cons. I now want to move on to kind of showing you the competition that's out there if you're kind of considering this brush, is some of the other popular options on the market. Okay guys, so the other popular option on the market is the EZ wheel brush, which typically costs around £21. This is a barrel cleaning brush only, so you're only really supposed to use it for your barrels, but you can kind of use it for the faces, but it's just not ideal. This contains a mild steel core that I don't think you should really bend around, because the steel doesn't like being bent, and I think you'll encourage this to snap if you do it. If you use this tool properly, it will last up, and it is more aggressive than the Wolly Wormit. And also this can get into virtually every single alloy this can get into, like I talked about in the review. So that's a very popular choice, and perhaps if you're in the trade, this is the one that kind of everyone is using. But there's some things that this brush cannot do as well as the Wolly Wormit, and vice versa. So always with brushes, there's a little bit of strengths and weaknesses. Next up is the wheel woolies. Now you typically buy these in a set of three brushes, the big one, middle one, and a tiny little one down there. Where is it? There it is, the little tiddler. Now these brushes, the main advantage is, one, they've got a very stout handle on them, so the handle is good on these, and the material that they use on these brushes is fantastic. The problem is I can never ever use this brush on any of my cars because it's just too big, it doesn't get into the gap. So that's a big disappointment for me, but when I can use these wheel woolies, I find they are fantastic. This one as well, it gets torn up a little bit on the M140, but I can just about kind of use this. Like I say, this set of wheel woolies is 43 quid. The big brush is about kind of 20 quid. You can get another wheel woolly that's angled to go behind the wheels, but that one costs 18.95. These are very popular. When they work, they're a really good brush, and they're sort of like in the middle on aggression and kind of safety. They're just good, but you can't always use them, and they are quite expensive. Finally guys, another really popular one that I've talked about on the channel is the microfiber Incredi brush, which has some similarities to the Wolly Wormit. The cover of this is detachable. It fits over a sort of soft sponge. It has a flexible handle, and it's not very aggressive. It's about the same thickness as the Wolly Wormit, and I can just about get round this behind my brake discs, but I can only use this brush to clean the alloy wheel barrel. I can't use it for the face because of the handle. I can't really do the lug nuts with it. So there's some pros and cons, and it's a little bit more expensive, but this is a really good brush as well, and it's the one that you have probably seen me using more times on the 140 because of the fact that it's not aggressive like the Wolly Wormit, and I don't need to use the nylon one. I'll use the nylon one typically on the Golf where it hasn't been cleaned for a couple of months, and I'll get in there and just scrub it all out. So overall guys, on price, this thing kind of sits somewhere in the middle. All of these brushes that I've shown you are kind of premium detailing scene brushes, if you like. If you go into Halfords, you can get the Maguire's wheel brush, which is a sort of cheaper version that's slightly different to this, but I don't think it's as good. It's the steel core is not protective, and it rots and it goes rusty. You know, but it's £10, and Halfords sell a chenille on a stick that I don't think flexes, that's below £10. So there is a cheap option. You know, there's cheap options out there that you might want to consider if this is out of budget. But the price of this, although £24 sounds expensive initially, the fact that you can use it to get behind your brushes, if you're using the wheel woolies and you've bought the other angled brush and you've got all the other big brushes, you're spending about 60 quid. So there are some arguments that this brush is reasonably kind of priced, although £24 isn't cheap, is it? So I've got to talk about these things, and then you can make your own kind of mind up on that. So that's talking about price and talking about all the other kind of brushes that are on the market. Let's go on to the final conclusions on this particular product. So guys, whenever design comes into play and someone tries to design something that is multifunctional, you know, can do other things, there are always compromises around the design, I think, because like an example of that is if you want to use this to clean the face of your alloy, you can't have an integrated handle on it, and then that creates the problem that you've got to hold on to the wet bit, which is a negative with this particular product, and that might put some people off. So that's a compromise of what they're trying to do in the design. But overall, when I first kind of saw this and looked at it, my gut instinct was that it might be a little bit kind of gimmicky. But quite simply, when I use the product, it feels like it can do a good job of cleaning out the barrels and definitely behind the spokes. And it feels like it does a good job with the wheel lug nuts. And now I can clean the face of my alloy wheel with this particular brush, but I still think I would almost maybe just like to have a cheap mitt thrown in the bucket as well, because it just conforms to the surface better. It doesn't feel like that kind of log. But I could do that. I could use this to do the face. So all in all, the design that's trying to give you this all-in-one capability, I think has just about kind of worked. And on the whole, the brush seems pretty decent. The most important thing that I was worried about, that it wasn't going to be stiff enough and it was going to be bending around when I was pushing it into the shaft, when I was pushing on the shaft to get it into the barrel. And it doesn't. It seems okay on that. It's reasonably stout. So overall, guys, hopefully I've shown you enough of this brush for you to make a kind of informed decision on whether you like it or not. Okay guys, thank you very much for watching this video. If you've bought this particular brush, let me know what you think about it, what's good about it, what's bad about it. If you're thinking of buying it, let me know what you think about it. Has this review been any use in kind of helping you? This product has been sent into this review from Into Detailing, who sell this brush. You can try the discount code. It doesn't work on all of their products. Some of them have to sell at certain prices, but try the discount code Forensics and you might get 10% off this particular brush. So thank you very much for watching, guys, and I'll see you soon on the Forensics Detailing channel. Bye for now. It's a wrap.
Holding on to what I knew, but the moment's gone. Where was I?